Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle Ferguson and I'm the crochet pattern designer of Two Brothers Blankets. Today I'm going to share some tips and tricks that I have for sewing your crochet pieces together. As you can see, I am sewing two panels of crochet together. This is for a vest pattern that I have, and I need to sew the backs, and I'm going to have to sew along the sides as well. So I've already started, but I've got a long tail of yarn here. Your pattern will either say to cut a long piece or to leave a long piece when you fasten off at the ends. And then I've got a metal just yarn needle here that I'm using to do my sewing. I've got it looped through my yarn. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm doing. Okay, first I want to share these stitch markers that I have placed at the stitch after I need to stop sewing. So that stitch next to the stitch markers is where my last sewn stitches will be. And I find that helpful so I don't have to be counting and all that while I'm trying to sew. So I've done part of my sewing here already. I've lined up all my stitches. In this case, I am working with my pieces side by side next to each other. So I can line up the stitches, and I'm working into crochet stitches. These are double crochet stitches. So it's really, really easy to do the sewing for this type of project. So I'm using the mattress stitch, which if you don't know what that is, it is where you are going to work like a zigzag between your stitches. You're just going to take your yarn and needle and do a zigzag. So what I'm doing here is it's just come out right here. So I'm going to work over these stitches right here and under the two loops of the double crochet on my left panel. I'm going to just pull my yarn through those two loops like so until it is done. Then I'm going to do the same thing with my needle. I'm going to take it, I'm going over this stitch that I just worked in, and then I'm going to go under the two loops of the next stitch on my right panel and then pull. So I'm just working a zigzag back and forth. You can see this way, then this way. So then we're going to do it again. Go up under the next the two loops of the next stitch, pull through all the way, and then the same thing. Go up under the other two. And that is what they call the mattress stitch. And you can see the zigzags. And as I go, you'll see it better. But it's just back and forth, and you're getting every single stitch sewn together. You're not skipping over any. You're just going into each stitch and go under both of those loops at the top of your stitch, like so. Whoops. Getting tangled up. All right. So as you can see, I've got my zigzags here. Do, 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 do. And when I pull tight, that pulls it all together, and you have basically like you can't even see it. The seam is nearly invisible. So that is one reason many people love the mattress stitch. It's super simple and it is nearly invisible when you pull tight. You can also do it where you don't pull tight and you have that little zigzag effect if that's what you want for your, it almost is like a laced up look. Like a corset would have or something like that, or a vest or something to that effect. You can do it that way. But when you pull tight, it is like you can't even hardly see it at all. So that's a really nice stitch for, especially when you're working into the top of some stitches. You're not working along the side where there are no stitches. And even nicer when you can work like this with the pieces side by side next to each other. So for these kind of things, like I said, if you've got a lot to sew, mark your stitch with stitch markers where you need to stop. get a long piece of yarn. If you're cutting yarn, for this one, I cut 3 times the length of what I need to sew, just to be sure that I have plenty of yarn for it. And then I also like to use a metal hook for sewing. It's just very smooth and easy to work with. So those are just a few tips. Now let's go into another project and I'll give you a few more tips. All right, for this next project, I am working into the sides and they don't have any stitches, and I've got one piece on top of the other. So for this one, I am going to work the whip stitch. You don't have to do the whip stitch. You can do the mattress stitch when working a project that is just along the sides and you're not working into stitches. You can still do it. My suggestion is to try both and see which one you like. This one, I just want it to be very sturdy and stay where it needs to be. It does have a bit of a seam. Let me see if I can turn it in on the other way. Right here, you can see where I've attached them. It's a little bit of a seam, but I don't really mind because it's along the side and not that noticeable. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my yarn and needle. I've got my piece inside out, so the wrong sides are facing out. And I'm going to take it and just take my needle through both panels and pull through. Got a long tail, probably too long. All right, and leave plenty left over. And then I'm just going to take my needle and go back through again in the next little set of loops. Like so. And then I'm going to continue doing that. I'm just working along these like side loops. They're not really stitches or anything, but they are loops, so they're sturdy enough to hold my yarn. And I'm just going to keep going all the way up that way, and I'm doing the whip stitch. And like I said, just you might want to try both. But for this particular project, I've done both in the sides where there's no stitches. For this particular project, I'm using the whip stitch. I'm just going around the entire set for both panels. Like so. I'm going to do that all the way to the top.